What's up, fellas? So today we're going to talk about 5 things that will make your man go away and it will make him lose completely interest in you. So the first thing is, we're going to go straight to the point, is the texting, okay? So I want you to actually handle the texting and the messaging with your partner, or eventually with the guy you're actually dating with. So what you want to actually end and really do the right thing in your texting game, because when a man sees you being too available in messages, you know, with the messaging, with the texting and everything, maybe you're sending too many GIFs, too many photos, you're actually being too complacent in the messaging, that will actually make him fly away. Why is that gonna make him fly away? Because basically, it's gonna start giving you for granted. Now, you don't want a man to actually give you for granted. You want a man to be some kind of, actually, you want him to have doubts about you. You want him to start thinking about you, and you don't want him to be so sure and certain about you, sending him messages every single day, every hour of the day. You need to take your time. So the first thing is to respect the ratio 1-on-1. The women that don't respect the ratio 1-on-1, they're gonna have some really big old problems. I guarantee you that, because basically the main issue is that men don't want you to actually be granted for them. They want to feel like you are some special gift. There's a mystery. There's something about you that they can actually do not understand 100%. There's always that 80% they get, but there's this 20% they cannot manage to actually understand from you. That's what men really want. That's what they really need to actually focus on in order to basically start thinking about you and go on with falling in love with you. Otherwise, you're gonna make them fly away. You're gonna make them lose completely interest. So the first thing is respect the ratio 1-on-1. Don't be too obvious in the messaging. Don't over text this guy. Second thing is gonna be, don't go to bed with him. Don't sleep with him too many times, okay? Sleeping with a guy too many times is gonna cause a lot of problems, because he's gonna actually start taking for granted the sex. He will start thinking that sex is granted, so there's not going to be a problem with that. It's not a big deal. So if sex is granted, hey, why not to start looking for another woman? Or maybe why not to start looking for other girls? Because basically you're going to end up being a little bit boring for him, you know? So you don't want the sex to be too granted. So you want to alternate that sex to ratio. Like every time you go to bed with him, doesn't always have to happen. You know, it doesn't always have to be like some sort of sex, complete penetration, or a sex, or whatever it is. You want to make it really diversified with the ratio, good old ratio. Like for the texting, as I was saying before, in order to avoid the over texting, you want to focus on basically utilizing a good ratio when you go to bed with him. Like for example, the first time you see him, you don't go to bed. Second time, you don't go to bed. Third time, you go to bed. Fourth time, you don't go to bed. Fifth time, you go to bed, and you go on like that, like a 1-on-1. That allows you not to make him lose interest, because if he takes you for granted, he's going to obviously take for granted the sex, and if he takes for granted the sex, he's going to take for granted everything about you. So the third thing is being too much of a loud mouth. You start talking about everything about your life. Now I want you to actually start to think about the idea of mystery. What does that mean? That means being able to keep the mystery. Don't tell him too many things. Keep the things for yourself and just try to understand what's happening. In a conversation with a man, with a guy you're dating, you want to start thinking about the idea of actually some kind of a ping pong game, you know, a tennis table game. When you just you launch one and you wait for another one. You launch one and you wait for another one. That's the way you do it. You don't start launching a lot of balls to the guy. You wait for him to respond. So you go like in a conversation, you don't want to tell everything about your past. There's going to be a problem with telling everything about your past, because if you tell everything about your past, the mystery is going to fall down and you will not be seen anymore as something to discover. In order to keep a man interested in you and not to make him lose interest, he needs to keep on thinking about the idea of discovering your personality, discovering your brain, picking things you're going to be saying and doing. So the past has to be discovered. In order to feel him like, to make him feel like he's discovering the past, you need to start thinking about the idea of not saying every single thing about your past. Okay? So that's the way you keep the mystery. Like, for example, don't tell him everything about your ex-partners. Tell him you were dating some good guys, they were treating you well, but don't be too specific. Allow him to be specific, allow him to ask questions. You start asking him questions and you start being specific and see if he responds back with a good old question for you. Okay? Like for example, you ask him about his past partners, like, oh, what's with your ex? Was she good with you? How come you broke up with her? And he goes like, well, you know, she was kind of mad at me. Then I decided to give up because she was crazy. She had a bipolar disorder. And if he's not answering with another question to you, so if he's not making another question to you, just don't say, well, me too, I had this good old boyfriend, he was like this, he was like that. No, just shut up, okay? Just don't say anything. Let him ask questions. If he doesn't ask questions, maybe he's not interested. You keep on with asking questions and you keep yourself in the mystery. So you only say things he actually asks for. Okay, so he asks you like questions about something in your past, then you give him the answers, and the answers don't have to be extremely detailed. So I'm gonna give you a fourth thing that basically destroys completely a man's interest, which is when you don't give back the questions. So it's just like the third point I was talking before. Now, say you're talking in a conversation and having a good old convo with your favorite boy. Now, the problem is going to be, you will give him the answers, yeah, but you have to give a question back, okay? So, as I was saying before, it's like table tennis, okay? There has to be like two players to play the game. You don't play with yourself. So, in order to keep the conversation going, you need to wait for another answer, okay? And it gives you a question, and then when you answer, you give another question back. So, giving another question back allows you to just let the convo flow. Like for example, also I call it ramification. It's just like you extract from what the answer was of the question. Like for example, if you say something like, well, I used to go horseback riding, then your obvious answer will be, oh yeah, I love horseback riding. I used to do that once. Do you do that so often? So you keep up with the question, okay? It gives you an answer and you keep up with the question. If you don't do that, anything like that, you're gonna have some real issues with bringing on the relationship. You're gonna have some real issues with giving him a really good time. So basically it's gonna lose interest. And then there's one last thing, which is the most important thing in order not to make him lose interest. He doesn't have to know that you're sexually promiscuous. What do I mean by that? It doesn't have to know, it doesn't have to understand that you really like sex or that you're dating a lot of men. What men really need is to think that you probably could be hanging out with other men, but you didn't have sex with all those men. So you don't want to see, you don't want to say, you see how we come back to the idea of mystery. You don't want to tell him that you had sex with a lot of men. You never want to talk about sex with men in your past. You need to keep the idea of being some kind of a pure woman. We call it Angelica in Italy, okay? That's like being some kind of an angel. But there's the devil beneath, because he has to think that you're an angel, but has to have the suspect that maybe you were some kind of a promiscuous girl, you were a bad girl. If you were a bad girl, you don't have to say. You just have to keep your mouth shut and just let it go. And let him think that maybe, well, yeah, you had sex with some man, but, well, I don't like it. Ladies don't talk about this. If he asks you questions that are too specific, then your answer will be, well, ladies don't talk about this. Let's talk about you instead. How are you doing? So you see how this actually derails from the idea of telling everything from your past and the idea of discovering the other guy. So just focus on these 5 things in order to not make him lose interest, and you will see that your relationship with the guys you're dating will obviously start nurturing more interest towards you. Subscribe to the channel. This is Federico. I'll see you in the next.